Not that I'm trying to sync any sound. I'm going to preface this one here by saying that this is just a random thought that kind of came to my mind while I was out at Festival 1 in Mystery Creek not long ago. I was having a discussion with a friend just about how our lives and our stories can have different arcs. And that sort of, the best way to describe it is that you get lots of little arcs when you start. And then as we get older, the stories seem to get longer and the things God works on with us seem to continue to grow and continue to take over more of our lives. And they're harder to pinpoint because these stories, these things that God's trying to do, stretches out over a longer period of time. And this is sort of what that thought's about. I'm going to try and explain this thought through the best way that I can think of, which is kind of trying to use my own experiences, my own little hops, and then longer jumps and story arcs to sort of try and get the point across. I'm sorry if it doesn't make all that much sense, but it was just sort of something that I didn't do very well when I was talking to this guy, and I kind of want to try and express a bit better now. Growing up in a Christian family, I always found it easy to talk about my experiences and the things that I'd been through. I sort of came to the conclusion while I was a youth that I should be able to share my experiences and the things that God's put me through, and even if it touches one person's heart, and I've made an absolute fool of myself, but it's still convicted one person or it's made an impact on one person's life, then I've done what God has asked me to do. So I was always very willing to share my stories and share what's been going on in my life and the things that have affected and changed me. But that sort of became a lot harder to do once I left high school. So growing up, there's always these small little steps and these small little hops that you've been able to make, and that I've been able to see God moving in my life, whether they've been trying different things or people that have affected me in different ways, or I don't know, small things like that, small arguments or events in my life, going out to Sunshine Ranch for the first time, meeting a bunch of Christians that have questioned me and questioned the way that I do things, that have had little bunny hop steps, small little story arcs that have affected and changed my character over a short period of time. I feel though as we get older that God wants to use us in a bigger way. He stops worrying so much about the small little arcs and the small little issues that we had when we were younger, that are so easy to talk about and that are so easy to identify, and he starts to work on bigger, longer character traits, stuff that takes lots of time to develop, stuff that we can't really put our finger on. I struggle to put my finger on the ones in my own life. When I go to tell my story, I kind of had to stop at high school and be like, I don't know what's happening here because God and I are still working through this. It's something that you need to spend some time thinking about, and that you need to really stop and pinpoint, okay God, where are we going with this? What are the story arc, the longer arching story arcs that you're trying to develop in my life? So an example from my own personal experience would be some of the traits that I developed when I was younger, like the ability to share my story, the struggles that I've been through relating to people, stuff that I really worked on in small hops by meeting new people and just becoming more and more confident and more capable with talking. These small arcs, although important, were really only setting the base foundation for the bigger arcs that God's going to walk me through and that God is walking me through right now. So these small little hops, like the communicating, like the developing friendships, like creating the person that I am and the interests that I have, were only the first little steps. The story arcs that God has got me in now and the story arcs that God takes us through as we get older are becoming longer and longer. They're overarching. These longer story arcs don't satisfy us as much as the smaller little ones. We can't tell people about them. We struggle to identify them in the moment, unlike other times when we can really say, yes, this is God being mean to me, or this is God trying to change this trait about me, whereas these longer ones are really hard to pin down. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I think it's so important that we see that these traits are longer, these story arcs are significantly longer, and that they aren't these little traits, there's stuff that's going to work on over years and years of time. One of my longer story arcs is my lust for things. I really struggle to be satisfied with what I have. I lust and want after the things that are newer, anything that I don't have and that I see on a shelf. I kind of like, ooh, that'd be cool to have. But as I've gone over the last 2 years and as I've focused on being content, I feel like that was an entire year-long story arc. I still haven't come to a place where I'm happy with the level of contentness that I have. I think it's a continuing working thing. Paul talks about it being content and having to pray for things. And that's something I still struggle to do. I still struggle to pray over everything, the key to contentness. And I think it's a longer arcing story of mine that's really going to change the way that I look at life and change the way that I look at things. And I think these longer story arcs show us something about God. They show us something about the way that He is an ever-working God. He doesn't just place us on this earth and then leave us to abandon and work on our own traits by ourselves. I think He is constantly with us and He's constantly walking beside. And I heard an interesting seminar while I was at Festival 1 about walking with God. Strawn mentioned the fact that when we walk with God and we discover ourselves with God, that we draw closer to Him. I think that's really important in this sort of situation, is that these small hops we can discover God, but it's the longer lasting walk, the longer lasting arcs where we really discover who God is and how He's going to impact our lives. And I think it really shows also that God's not just a band-aid sort of going to stick on and then we'll rip Him off when the issue's dealt with. He wants to work with you and He wants to continue to walk with you. And He wants you to continue walking with Him. He wants me to continue walking with Him. In conclusion, it's the long game that God is wanting us to walk with Him. Yes, the little bunny hops are important in their character building, and I can't stress enough the small issues that you should still look into. But the big issues are really the ones where God is trying to go, okay, here's something, let's work on this together. That is the God I want to walk with.